Hi, Booktube. It's Marilyn, also called Maya, and I'm here today with some happy, I hope, or comfort, I hope, book mail. But before I get into the mail that I've gotten this month and not opened, I want to thank everyone who has participated in Mental Health May. As you may know, Kim from Middle of the Book March and I are, and I'm still doing a readathon this month where we talk about mental health. We talk about our mental health and we read books about mental health. So, how am I doing? Well, that's a question. Coinciding, wait a minute, say that 3 times. Well, coinciding with May, I've had some problems mental health wise. And I'm not blaming it on Mental Health May, just life issues. But it gave me pause to think that I had some more work to do mental health wise. I told everybody I suffer from anxiety, and I knew that I was still feeling a little down, like some mild depression and some anticipatory anxiety, which was part of my agoraphobia. Now that's a mouthful, so let me explain. Anticipatory anxiety is when you're thinking about what you have to do. Maybe it's going to work, going to the dentist like I did yesterday. And you have to do that. And while you're getting ready to do this, you're anxious. You have this feeling in the pit of your stomach that everything is going to go wrong and you won't be able to get out. And sometimes you're just paralyzed with fear. But then when you get out, it seems that nothing goes wrong and you're not nervous anymore, even if something does go wrong. And I have a little bit of that. And some of the books that I've been reading have been helping. I have to say that some of the books that I've been reading have been causing a little anxiety, have been a little triggering. But that's, par for the course. One thing I've realized is that I need to go to therapy again, maybe once a week for a while, to kind of find out what's going on. And the books that helped really helped. And I want to go through some of the books that I've read that have helped. This book is called Coward, and it's by Tim Clare. And I have to say, it's not very dense, but it does go into how he got through. And he says in the end, I guess it's a spoiler, but in a nonfiction, it's kind of hard to have a spoiler. Usually, if you're going to talk about anxiety, you're either going to get well or you're not. But it says why we get anxious and what we can do about it. And he's a very good person, and I really like him a lot. He really goes into what might have caused his anxiety disorder, how bad it got, and it got really bad. And at the end, he does have some answers. He really goes through a lot of modalities, including healing modalities, including hypnotism, breathing, yoga, religion. I mean, he really tried. And not saying that, and medication. But at the end, and something really came up for me that I want to talk about. It says, he's talking about, if I do have the power to change, why the hell don't I? People would go, hey, be kind to yourself. Stop beating yourself up. And that carries an implicit message. Stop expecting so much of yourself. People told me not to be hard on myself, but they never told me what to do instead. How to stop feeling uncomfortable, apprehensive, terrified. They never explained how I was supposed to navigate the week ahead, the dread and avoidance, the squandered opportunities, the arguments, the slow disease of chronic anxiety. What I've discovered is that the opposite of anxiety isn't comfort. It's curiosity. It's appetite. It's moving toward things that make you feel alive and embracing them while doing your best to accept that things will go wrong. I can be terrified doing nothing, so I might as well get into some memorable scrapes. And then that really made me realize something, why I got into so many scrapes and was not a sensible person during the height of my anxiety, why I took risks. And I think that somehow I felt worse when I was doing nothing. So, yeah, that was really an insight to my own behavior that really helped. And I think this book can help because it's not dense. He says in the beginning that he's not a psychologist and he's not going to really go into deep stuff. I found it was deep enough, though. I felt that he goes into some studies about genetics, about which therapies help and which don't. So, at least to him, it might help you if you're going through anxiety, but it didn't help him. And what did help him? And at the end, I think he kind of says what I read, what helped him. And he says he hasn't had an anxiety attack in 2 years. So good for him. I recommend the book. Another book I read, and this was to get away from all of the books about anxiety, I thought, was Ruth Rendell's Dark Corners, and it's a novel. I gave it 5 stars. I didn't think I would give it 5 stars, but I gave it 5 stars, and let me tell you why. This was Ruth Rendell's last book, and it's out there. I would say it's dark and it's satiric, but in a really good way. What I wrote on Goodreads was that in her last book, Ruth Rendell really, she goes there into the dark corners. Not only that, but she is obsessed with buses. And I read another Ruth Rendell with her Inspector Wexford book that wasn't as dark as this, but also had to do with riding buses. So one of her many odd and sometimes unlikable characters. This one wasn't an unlikable character. He's retired and he doesn't want to go golfing. He doesn't want to do anything, but he finds a hobby of going on buses and exploring London. So it has that little bit in it. The main character here comes off in the beginning as being very unlikable. And then I realized that he was going through a mental breakdown. And a lot of the characters in this book are exaggerated. That's what I mean about satire in this book. They're exaggerated, but realistic. And a lot of coincidences happen that you might not like, but really worked out in the best way possible. The ending was chef's kiss. She really ended the book well. And yeah, so what is it about? I don't really want to go into it that much, except to say that a writer who was given a house by his family, he was left a house, doesn't have much money. He had one bestseller, and now he's not doing well. So he wants to let a room or an apartment on the top floor of his house. And that's where things go wrong. He needs the money, and the person he rents to is creepy. And that's all I'll say to it. There's a lot of characters in this book, and they're very interesting, to say the least. But the way she wraps up the story and makes you believe that all of these things could have happened, and it's just, I don't want to spoil it anymore, but read it, just read it. I'm reading now I tried to read it at the beginning of the month. It's Little Panic by Amanda Stern. And when I read the first chapter, it has small chapters. And in my writing, I also am a fan of small chapters. But her first chapter was, I am not a clock. And I said, of what is she speaking of? Is this going to be boring? And then I went into it, and it's her childhood where she can't tell time. Her anxiety is not letting her be able to tell time. So it says here, and this is what made me keep on reading it, this canny, insightful, novelistic memoir traces the indelible path Stern's underlying anxiety has created a rich but often frustrating life. And she's also written an affecting, emotionally vivid memoir and succeeds in giving the reader what it's really like to be in another person's, shoes, so to speak. So I said, I had problems telling time, tying my shoelaces, being so afraid of teachers, doctors. And I said, I have to read this. And I'm liking it so far. So I'm going to continue. I bought this book. It was withdrawn by the Boulder Public Library. So I'm saying, why did they withdraw it? I think it's good. And as an author, I'm always sensitive when a library withdraws a book that you've written. I'm sure many people have gone through that, many writers. But those are the books that I'm reading for Mental Health May, or just for May. And let's see what I'm going to read for the rest of May, maybe, or it's the end of May. So I opened up, I didn't look at them, but I opened up some of the books already. And let's see. Woo! First book is The Tin Flute. Now, why did I buy this? I think, going back, I was doing a buddy read with Nikki from Red Dot Reads. And at the same time, she was doing a buddy read that she liked better than our buddy read at the time, which gave me a little bit of, what? No. And she said this was a good book. I'm not sure it's a comfort book, though. It says, The Tin Flute, Gabrielle Roy's first novel, is a classic of Canadian literature. Imbued with Roy's unique brand of compassion and compelling understanding, this moving story focuses on a family in the Saint-Henri slums of Montreal, its struggles to overcome poverty and ignorance, and its search for love. An affecting story of familiar tenderness, sacrifice, and survival during the Second World War. The Tin Flute won both the Governor General's Award and the Prix Femina of France. The novel was made into a critically acclaimed motion picture, 1983. Have you read The Tin Flute? It doesn't sound like it's going to be a comfort read, but I remember how Nikki said that this was a 5-star read for her. And our book was only a 4-star read, and it was a 5-star for me. So let me know in the comments what you think. The book that I was reading with Nikki was How Green Was My Valley by Richard Llewellyn, who, to me, it was a beautiful novel, and it was about Welsh mining family. I think they were called the Morgans. And it was just, to me, it was beautiful. But she was reading The Tin Flute. I hope I got all this right, but it made me want to buy this. So if you read it, let me know. So let's see what else I have. This one is from Thrift Books, become my latest place to get books lately. Okay, I remember this. All right, it's better than the other one. It's Tuesday, the Rabbi Saw Red by Harry Kemelman. Now, why did I buy this? because my library had this book. It was in such terrible condition that I just could not read it. And this book, yeah, it's a little better. It said it was very good condition, but it's just maybe in fair to good condition. So have you read the Rabbi Small books? I find them very interesting. He's a rabbi of a conservative synagogue, and he solves crimes by using the Talmud, which is a book of rabbinic law. And he uses this book to solve crimes, which is really different. And this one, Rabbi Small has had it with the constant bickering of congregational life. So when offered the chance to teach a course in Jewish studies in Windermere Christian College, he grabs it. He should have quit when he was ahead. That sounds delightful. So the Rabbi Small books, they go Monday to Saturday, I think Sunday, I should say Monday to Sunday. And each one is the rabbi did something. He slept late. He didn't eat. He was hungry. I read that book. I really liked it. So I'm looking forward to reading this in a better but not perfect edition. So if you've read Rabbi Small and you like it, if you like these books, let me know down in the comments. And then I have a book that I knew who the person was because it wasn't a book I bought. This book came, it's a friend of mine on Booktube, and it's Wild Geese. And we did a buddy read together, and she knows my taste. So it's by Martha Ostenso, and I think it's also a Canadian novel. Yeah, in a farming community on the windswept plains of northern Manitoba, the fiery Judith Garr struggles for freedom from her father's brutal, controlling rule. Told with vigor and lyric beauty, Wild Geese is a powerful and erotic evocation, I don't know if I'm saying that right, of life stripped to its fundamentals, and a poignant exploration of passion, need, and isolation. A sensation when it was first published, this novel is recognized as one of the forerunners in a new realist movement in Canadian writing. And I think it was pretty old. And I'm trying to find out what when this was written. Oh, here it is, 1925. So this also would qualify for May of the Moderns. And I was trying to do that when I was buying books because I love this period. I really love this period of time. So I'm going to read this. Thank you, friend, for sending this to me. And no, I don't have a copy. The last book that I want to talk about is one of my favorite authors that I found on Booktube. And her name is Barbara Comyns, and this is The House of Dolls. And if you can see the old-fashioned photo, though I don't think it's that old, but let's see when it was written. Yeah, it's 1989. I knew it. Was it 89? So she was born in 1909, one of 6 brothers and sisters, Barbara Comyns. She grew up very unsupervised under the lax eyes of governesses in the Warwickshire countryside. Her most celebrated novel, which I loved, includes Our Spoons Came from Woolworths and The Juniper Tree. And I have both of those books. I've only read Our Spoons Came from Woolworths, and I'm about to read The Juniper Tree. She's very quirky. And so what is this about? Well past their prime, the 4 ladies who live at Mulberry Green remember better days of parties and servants. when rent was nothing to be collected, was something to be collected, or that's what they pretend. Nowadays, they remember the rent only too well. Once a servant herself, Amy Dahl is reluctant madam to her genteel lodgers of higher class and lower morals, all too well aware that the little business of their makeshift brothel is not without its occupational hazards, wickedly funny and profoundly sad. And I think that's what really gets me about her writing. She can write about such sad things so funnily, so comedic, that you don't know whether to laugh or cry. And I think I started this on a Kindle for a sample that I got on Kindle. And I said, oh, yes, definitely. And let me read the first chapter. Amy Dahl, are you telling me that all these old girls upstairs are tarts? I love it. I just love it. Well, those are the books, I guess, that I'm going to read in June. I guess most of them are not mental health books. I want to talk about one other book that I got that I took out of the library. It's called Soup, Broth, Bread by Rachel Allen. And now this is a real comfort book. It has heartwarming recipes of making soup. How can, when I feel down, that's what I like to do. I want to make soup. I want to do something that's going to comfort me to eat. The only thing about this book I noticed was there's a lot of pork items in this book. Even this one, lovage, pea, cucumber, and bacon. But I guess you could switch out the bacon. And the pictures are just wonderful. She has a Chinese-style duck broth with noodles. That's yummy and looks yummy. I just love it. Well, here's shrimp and pork wonton, both of which I don't eat. But I like to look at the pictures. It gives me joy. And lamb and pearl barley. I love barley soup. Do you make soup? Let me know. This is by Rachel Warren. It says, proof that soups are not just for winter. Bright, zesty, and fresh. Comforting, like Rachel herself. To warm the heart and restore the soul. Now, isn't that something for Mental Health May? Well, that's the end of my video this week. Next week, I'm going to do not a live, but a Zoom call with my co-host, Kim. And we're going to talk about our book read-along read. Let me know in the comments if you've read the read-along read. Maybe you should talk to someone by Lori Gottlieb. Let me know if you've read that. We're going to talk about that later, but I did finish that book. I started it in April because that's part of my perfectionism problem. I had to finish that book. But, I really want to, again, thank you so much for participating, even if you only read one character of a book that had a mental illness, because the stigma of mental illness is really so difficult. I want to share something with you. My son, I have a son with severe mental illness that I talked about, and I worry about him every day. I don't know if he's homeless in LA. I don't know if he's hooked up with somebody who's going to help him. And all I can do is pray that I don't outlive him as a mother. That's all we care about. Because we can't help everyone who has a mental illness, but we can help ourselves, and we can help our attitudes, how we treat people with mental illness. And it makes me think of that song, Another Day in Paradise, where this woman is homeless and everybody's just walking. Another day in paradise. We're just walking by and not even thinking that this is a human being. When Phil Collins wrote this song, it really made me change my attitudes when I see homeless people. And I try to, as we say in Hawaii, houseless people, and I try to treat them like human beings because that's what they are. And it's only the stigma that makes people so afraid of them most of the time. I'm not saying that every mentally ill person is harmless. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying for the most part, they're just people who have fell on hard times or who can't control their mental illness because the social networks might not be enough to help them. And that's true in almost every state that I know in the United States where I've visited and seen people that were houseless. So if anything that happened this month, I hope it's changed one person's feeling about mental illness, that we should talk about it. Because most of us, and there was another book that I showed last time, Nobody's Normal. So we need to normalize mental illness because it's so prevalent in our society. So until next time, I hope that you will like this video. That would really help me a lot. And subscribe if you're new. And I'll see you all next time. And I wish you all the best of health and happiness. And of course, hang loose, aloha.